Hello, this is Jessica Pettit, and who do I have the pleasure of interviewing today?
Hi, it's Connie Rose from Connie Rose Consulting and Moving Beyond Me Too.
Excellent. Well, I'm very excited to have you. Out of all of our interviews, we have not really had a Me Too trauma-related expert inside of a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion umbrella. So I'm super excited to have you, Connie. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jess. I'm super excited too. Thanks.
Yay! As we have been doing these interviews, the whole point is to be able to showcase how our different experiences, our different lived experiences and work experiences and identity show up. So I'm going to ask you exactly the same questions, but I'm fascinated to see what your answers are through your lens. So first, two open-ended questions. There's no wrong answer. One of them that's rolling around in my head is the concept of diversity dividend. So the idea here usually comes up when people are talking about like the profit margins of doing our kind of work. So in thinking about investment, action, and return, what does diversity dividend mean to you?
In my world and in the realm of the work that I do in diversity and inclusion and bringing that conversation of trauma, because each and every one of us has experienced trauma at some time of our life. It just looks different for everyone in the capacity, whether it's complex trauma or secondary trauma or first trauma. And so with that, basically our ROI of that is if you work with your folks, whether it's in your corporation, your agency, your nonprofit, whatever it might be, not that you want to say you need to go get years of therapy. However, let's address things that have happened in your life. And how have possibly some things happened in your life that now are affecting how you are at work, how you engage, your leadership skills, how do you interact with other fellow employees? Do you step back when someone says, hey, Jess, we'd like to mentor you to become a supervisor or a vice president. And you are, because your thing was, I'm not good enough, right? And your whole book and all that. And internally, you're like, I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. You might be very vivacious and vocal, but internally, you've completely shut down. And then you'll see that your work, so why they wanted to promote you, all of a sudden you will start seeing that incredible work that you were doing to be noticed, so to speak, right? You start slacking, you start pulling back, you start going inward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, kind of the inverse of that, but the other topic that's rolling around in my head is asterisks, other duties assigned. There seems to be a pattern between things that are assigned to someone to do because of their identities or experiences that they're probably not rewarded for, right, or things that you take on either to build your own community or kind of using what you're talking about maybe to kind of get noticed, right, or maybe to hide and look really busy. But for you, in your own professional career and path, how has other duties assigned kind of shown up for you?
So I went, and I continue to go through this evolution in involving, because trauma is not something that just one day goes away, and if you have experienced, like I experienced what's called complex trauma, and that's because I have over 16 years of childhood sexual abuse, and so it compounded the trauma that I experienced. And so with that, what happens is that sometimes you go through these things about not being good enough, okay? But you also will go through, let me volunteer and take everything on that I can possibly humanly take on, and then that will make me good enough. And or someone will finally recognize I'm not invisible, that I am here. Or you take on so much so that you don't have to feel. Mm-hmm. So just think about for a moment in time when every speaking opportunity came your way, or every volunteer opportunity at work came your way, and you took it all on because there was something internally that you didn't really want to look at. Mm-hmm. all this stuff that's compounded, kind of like laying on your shoulders. Well, if you have all that and you are responsible to 6 or 8 different folks and team members and organizations and volunteer opportunities, you've taken on a big project like the hurricanes coming through, Florida, Dorian, you've taken on, well, I will be the person in charge of our chapter or our office to make sure all the equipment is raised up high and hurricane proofed. And you forgot about maybe your own family because there was trauma in that family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Can you, let's segue from this to more about your work. So, like I said at the top, it is fascinating to me that after doing all these interviews, our own trauma hasn't really shown up very much, maybe to some degree based on our subordination, oppression, marginalization, but not trauma in the sense that you talk about it, which obviously intersects with those as well. Can you tell me a little bit or tell us a little bit about your work, your approach, how trauma fits into diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which I think you've already started talking about, but also this moving beyond, which really is about healing, and how that's kind of a counter conversation or maybe even how it's perceived to the Me Too movement in general.
So how about I start there? So I'm going to start with the moving beyond Me Too. And the reason that I chose to speak about moving beyond Me Too is because I found so many survivors. I've been working with survivors since 1988. And I found so many survivors of childhood sexual abuse and of human trafficking, sex trafficking, because those are my 2 areas of expertise along with resiliency. And what I found is being stuck in victimhood. What I also found is, and as grateful as I am for all the media coverage that has happened in the last 2.5 years around the Me Too movement and around very high-profile individuals being caught, right, and survivors coming forward, it has not really trickled down to the everyday person. It has not really trickled down into agencies, into corporations. It has stayed up here. And so what I find that is happening is that so many folks are stuck in this victimhood. So there's the conversation of, look what happened to me when I was a child and I didn't have a voice. Now look what's happening to me because I'm not a celebrity and I still don't have a voice. And I'm like, you have a voice. There are so many areas, so if we want to talk diversity and inclusion, there are so many areas in your workplace that you can have a voice. And you don't have to go and say, hey, I was one of those people, and out yourself, but you can definitely step in and say, hey, based on all the media coverage and corporations having these folks running large corporations, right? How about I help put together a policy, procedure, and protocol around what happens when someone discloses? What can we do to make that happen? Then your voice is being heard. The other part of it is that I work with survivors of how to find their voice and how to move from victimhood to survivorhood to thriving. Because when you're thriving and you are really living life, it's very apparent on the outside that all of us, you can see that light, right? Like you can see when someone's really excited to talk about a water bottle, for an example, right? And so at one moment they're at work and they're talking about the water bottle, like here's this water and we have to find a way for everyone not to go around the water cooler. And so we'll give everyone a bottle of water at their desk to, oh my God, we have come up with this whole new program to stop that water cooler chatter, right? We now have these beautiful glass water bottles for every employee. And what has happened is productivity has gone up because negativity has gone down.
Yeah, what I really like about that too is it holds space for the individual to, I like the use of the word thrive, right? But it is also the case that an individual can be an ally or an advocate by creating institutionally supported processes to either eradicate negative talk or places where that may be occurring, but also a institutionalized support and reporting structure so that people individually can kind of move along, but also those individuals who maybe have gone through that process, maybe haven't, but they also hold a role and being able to create a really inclusive space. I think it's a really fabulous point, and it's desperately needed. So again, I'm grateful that you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you ready for my 2 favorite questions?
Absolutely. Bring it on, Jess. Bring it on.
Okay. So number 1 is, what have you changed your mind about lately?
Whoa. Well, in the Me Too movement, okay, and moving on the Me Too movement, there is a lot of conversation about very wealthy folks purchasing sex, right? So sex workers. And so with that, Washington, D.C. now has a law that they are pushing to pass, and it is about decriminalizing prostitution. And I'm all for the victims. I am all for sex workers and folks that are being trafficked or prostituted. They are not criminals. I'm all for that, even though prostitution is not legal in most states. However, it's also about the buyers and the pimps not being criminalized. And I've really had to struggle because of the work that I do. I know that the root cause for a very large majority of sex workers is what happened to them when they were a child between the ages of 3 and 5 years old. And part of that is statistical, part of that is my research, working on my PhD, and it's all based around childhood trauma, what's called the ACE study. So literally, and this morning, so how coincidental, reading so many posts on Facebook from fellow survivors that are extremely upset that sex workers are pushing this law to pass in Washington, D.C., because D.C. then will become a sex tourism. It's already kind of, but it will become legally. And I had to step back and say, I have to walk alongside my brothers and sisters that have made a choice to sell their bodies for sex. Mm-hmm. They too, they are human beings, and they too deserve to be heard. And what can I do to help give them a voice and to help protect them instead of joining, because it would be really easy for me to join with everyone else and bash them. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, though, create that awareness that having a state or a city such as Washington, D.C. Become like the sex tourism in the United States is not really a very good example for us. So that was a major, major thought process and change for me. And literally, it was just like 6 o'clock this morning.
Interesting. What do you absolutely know?
What do I absolutely know? I absolutely know that our world needs people like you and I to stand up and speak up and to have a voice and to walk along our brothers and sisters to help them find their voice. Because I firmly believe and have witnessed so many individuals being quiet about who they are, their identity, experiences that have happened to them. And because of being quiet, it has become a generational, right? And so I was just working with a survivor, and she's like, I finally came forward at our family reunion and told what had happened to me, and was ousted from the family reunion. But later what came up is all her cousins that it had happened to, her mom, her mom's sisters that it had happened to, and went back, I think, like 3 generations.
Wow.
Someone could have spoken up 3 generations, even 2 generations ago, even 10 years ago. How many folks would have been spared? And part of it was sexual violence, but it was also about like she's been questioning her sexual identity. Mm-hmm. And so because she's also questioning her sexual identity, that was another reason to oust her out of the family. Mm-hmm. And so it takes folks like us that are willing to stand up and walk along other people, other individuals, to like, what do you need? How can I support you? And more importantly, it's not about competition. I don't know about in your world, Jess, but in my world with survivors, it's always about, oh my God, well, if I help you, then you're going to take business away. Well, the truth of the matter is, I speak very different than a lot of other survivors speak, and they're not me, and I'm not them. And
Right. That's the whole premise of these conversations, right? Is that we're not interchangeable, but we're also, there's more work than one of us could ever possibly do.
Exactly.
So,
and organizations, corporations, they might connect with me, or they might say, hey, we would like to have someone that is like in their 30s, because we're, our corporation, most of the folks that work there are like in their 30s, and sometimes, that peer-to-peer kind of connection there. So
the term that I originally heard in a completely different context, but I use in these kind of moments, and then we'll go to lightning round, is cooperation.
Oh, I like that.
If we don't cooperate and support one another, we can't possibly be in competition with one another. Right. And if we're in competition with one another while cooperating and supporting one another, we're just solving the same problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready for lightning round?
I'm ready. All right. Bring it on.
Okay. So you picked 3 random numbers from my icebreaker cards. They could be easy, intermediate, or deep questions. You answer as quickly as possible, and we'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
First one is easy. Number 8. What is the best gift that you've received from someone? What was the best gift that you've given to someone?
The best gift, you can't really see my little necklace, but it's the other half of a sunshine, and it came from my daughter, Courtney, for Mother's Day, and she has the other half because she is my sunshine. She is one of my gifts from God. Both my children are one of my gifts from God.
That's amazing. That's great. Okay.
The best gift I gave. Yesterday I was with another survivor friend that's going through a lot, and I had on this necklace that I've not worn in forever. Why I picked it out of my closet, I don't know, but I did. She loved it. I gave it to her. She cried, and it was worth the smile on her face afterwards.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, number 12. If you were able to pick the one thing that always makes you smile, what would that be? What a great transition.
Thinking about my children. And how beautiful they are.
That's wonderful. All right, number 28 is intermediate. Share a single regret you have, and if you could, what would you do differently now?
Single regret I have is in 1988, I started speaking about breaking the silence and breaking the cycle of childhood sexual abuse. And then I just one day stopped, because I thought nobody wanted to hear it, and I became embarrassed. And I wish that I would have stayed on that continuum and not pulled back, because I feel that if I did, I could have made more of a difference than I have made in the last 20 years.
That's a great answer. Well, Connie, thank you very much for spending some time. If people wanted to get in touch with you, I know that your website and everything will be included in this video, but what's the best way to reach out and find out more about what you do?
Real simple. It's Connie, CONNIE, at Connie Rose, CONNIE Rose, ROSE, just like the flower, .com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Connie. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jess. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.